I still remember the exact moment I realized I was invisible in my own home. It was a Saturday afternoon in late September, and the doorbell rang with that particular urgency that meant Aunt Natalie had arrived. "Harper, sweetheart, can you get the door?" Mom called from the kitchen where she was preparing tea. Her voice carried that slight tension it always held when her sister was coming over. I set down my physics textbook and walked to the front door, smoothing down my faded jeans. Through the frosted glass, I could see two familiar silhouettes. I took a breath and opened the door. "Well, don't just stand there, dear. Help Sophia with her bags." Aunt Natalie swept past me in a cloud of expensive perfume, her heels clicking against our hardwood floor like little hammers. She didn't look at me, not really. Her eyes skimmed over me the way you'd glance at a piece of furniture you'd seen 1,000 times before. Sophia followed behind her mother, perfectly put together in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Her highlighted hair fell in smooth waves over her shoulders, and she wore that smile. The one that looked sweet from a distance but turned cold when you got close enough to see her eyes. "Hi, Harper." Her voice dripped with false warmth. "Still wearing that old hoodie, I see." I looked down at my favorite Northwestern hoodie, the one Dad had given me last Christmas. It was worn and comfortable, and I loved it. But suddenly, under Sophia's gaze, it felt shabby. "It's comfortable," I said quietly, reaching for one of her designer bags. "Oh, I'm sure it is." She brushed past me, leaving me holding a bag that weighed almost nothing. Everything about Sophia was effortless. Or at least, that's what she wanted everyone to believe. In the living room, Aunt Natalie had already claimed the best chair, the one Dad usually sat in when he came home from work. Mom emerged from the kitchen with a tray of tea and cookies, her face bright with forced cheer. "Natalie, Sophia, it's so good to see you both. How was the drive?" "Oh, exhausting, Lila. Simply exhausting." Aunt Natalie accepted a teacup with a sigh that suggested she'd just crossed the Sahara instead of driving 40 minutes from her house in the suburbs. "But we had to come. I have such wonderful news to share." I settled onto the couch, pulling my knees up under me. Mom sat beside me, and I felt her hand briefly squeeze mine. A small gesture of solidarity that made my throat tight. "Sophia received the Regional Science Excellence Award last week," Aunt Natalie announced, her voice rising with pride. "The youngest recipient in the program's history. They said her project on sustainable energy solutions was groundbreaking. Simply groundbreaking." "That's wonderful, Sophia. Congratulations." Mom's voice was genuine, warm. She'd always been kind to Sophia, even when Aunt Natalie wasn't kind to me. "Thank you, Aunt Lila." Sophia's smile widened and she leaned forward, her eyes finding mine. "It was a lot of work, but I've always been good at science. Some people just have a natural aptitude for it, I guess." The implication hung in the air. I'd gotten a B+ on my last chemistry test, and somehow Aunt Natalie had found out. She'd mentioned it during her last visit, her voice dripping with concern that fooled no one. "Harper works very hard in all her classes," Mom said, her hand finding mine again under the throw pillow between us. "She's taking advanced placement courses this year." "Oh, well, hard work is important, of course." Aunt Natalie waved her hand dismissively, her rings catching the light. "But natural talent, that's what really matters. Sophia's teachers say she's gifted. Actually gifted. They want her to apply for early admission to Stanford." "Stanford? Wow." My voice came out smaller than I intended. I cleared my throat. "That's really great, Sophia." She tilted her head, studying me with eyes that reminded me of a cat watching a mouse. "You're applying to colleges this year too, right, Harper? Where are you thinking? State school?" The question landed like a slap. State school wasn't said with curiosity. It was said with pity, with condescension, with that particular brand of cruelty that people like Sophia had perfected. The kind that let them wound you while maintaining plausible deniability. "Harper has excellent options," Mom said, her voice sharper now. "Her grades are strong, and she's been doing volunteer work at the community center." "Volunteer work?" Aunt Natalie made it sound like a quaint hobby. "That's sweet. Sophia has been interning at a biotech firm. Paid, of course. They specifically recruited her after seeing her award-winning research." I felt something crack inside me, like ice on a frozen lake. I stood up, mumbling something about homework, and headed for the stairs. "Harper, Mom started, but I was already gone. In my room, I pressed my back against the closed door and squeezed my eyes shut. I could still hear their voices drifting up through the floorboards, Aunt Natalie's loud proclamations, Sophia's practiced modesty that somehow made her achievements sound even more impressive. And underneath it all, Mom's quiet attempts to defend me, to make me visible to people who had decided years ago that I didn't matter. I walked to my desk and stared at the physics textbook I'd been studying. Thermodynamics, laws of energy and heat, everything in the universe seeking equilibrium, balance. If only human relationships worked that way. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Jamie. Movie tonight? I was about to respond when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Light, quick, Sophia. She didn't knock, just opened my door and leaned against the frame, examining my room with barely concealed amusement. Her gaze traveled over my secondhand furniture, my posters of female scientists and mathematicians, my overflowing bookshelf. Your room is so... you, she said. What do you want, Sophia? She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Her expression shifted, the mask of sweetness falling away to reveal something harder underneath. I want you to understand something, Harper. You're never going to be me. You can study all you want, try as hard as you want, but you'll always be second place. My mother knows it. Your mother knows it. Everyone knows it. I turned to face her fully, my hands clenched at my sides. Why are you like this? Like what? She examined her perfect manicure, all innocence. Cruel. Why do you have to be so cruel? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I'm not cruel, I'm just honest. Someone has to be. Your mom coddles you, tells you you're special when you're not. I'm doing you a favor. Better to know now than waste years chasing dreams you'll never reach. Get out of my room. Gladly. She turned toward the door, then paused, looking back over her shoulder. Oh, and Harper, I heard you talking to that college counselor last week. Northwestern? Really? They don't accept mediocre students, no matter how much they want it. After she left, I sat on my bed, shaking. Not from sadness, from rage. Pure, white-hot rage that burned through the shame and hurt and left something else in its place. Determination. I picked up my phone and texted Jamie back. Can't tonight. Need to study. The weeks that followed were hard. Aunt Natalie and Sophia came over for Sunday dinner, a tradition Mom had started years ago in an attempt to maintain family ties. Each dinner was an exercise in endurance. I learned to smile when Sophia talked about her latest achievement. I learned to nod when Aunt Natalie made her pointed comments, and I learned something else, something more important. I learned to stop caring what they thought. Instead, I focused. I spent my lunchtimes in the library working through practice problems. I stayed after school for extra help in calculus. I volunteered for every extra credit opportunity. And slowly, steadily, my grades began to rise. Dad noticed first. He came home from work one evening and found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and notes. Mom was making dinner, humming softly to herself. Working hard, kiddo? He set his briefcase down and loosened his tie. Just studying for the AP chemistry test. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, his expression serious. Harper, I want to talk to you about something. My stomach dropped. Had Aunt Natalie said something to him? Had I done something wrong? You've been pushing yourself really hard lately, he continued. Your mother and I have noticed. We're proud of you. But I need you to understand something important. I waited, my pencil frozen over my notebook. Your worth isn't determined by your grades. It's not determined by whether you get into some fancy school or win some prestigious award. You're valuable because you're you. Because you're kind and thoughtful and determined. Those things matter more than any test score. My eyes burned with sudden tears. But Aunt Natalie is wrong. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. She's wrong about you, and she's wrong about what matters in life. Success isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being the best version of yourself. Sophia is so much better at everything, though. Is she? Dad leaned back in his chair, studying me. Or does she just make more noise about her accomplishments? Real confidence doesn't need an audience, Harper. It doesn't need constant validation. You know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who works hard, who helps others, who doesn't give up even when things are difficult. That's strength, that's character, and that's worth more than all of Sophia's awards combined. Mom turned from the stove, her eyes shining. Your father's right, sweetheart. We love you for who you are, not for what you achieve. I know, I said, and I meant it. But I still want to prove myself. Not to them, to me. Dad smiled. Then do it. But do it on your own terms, for your own reasons. Don't let anyone else define your path. The real test came in early November when our AP chemistry teacher announced a major project. We would be competing in the State Science Symposium, and the winning project would receive a full scholarship to the university's summer research program. It was prestigious, competitive, and exactly the kind of opportunity that could make a real difference on college applications. Partners are mandatory, Mr. Chen announced. Choose wisely. This project will count for 30% of your grade. I turned to Jamie, who sat beside me. She grinned. Partners? Obviously. But before we could make it official, Mr. Chen added, Actually, I'm assigning partners this year. Too many students choose their friends and don't challenge themselves. My stomach sank. The last thing I needed was to be paired with someone who wouldn't pull their weight. Mr. Chen began reading off pairs. With each name, my anxiety grew. Finally, he reached my name. Harper Carter and Marcus Webb. I glanced across the room at Marcus, a quiet guy who sat in the back and rarely spoke. He looked equally unenthusiastic about the pairing. Great. After class, I caught up with him in the hallway. So, I guess we're partners. Looks like it. He adjusted his backpack, not meeting my eyes. Do you have any ideas for the project? Not really. Science isn't my thing. I'm just taking this class because I need the credit. Perfect, just perfect. I was stuck with someone who didn't care, competing against students like Sophia, who had every advantage. Listen, I said, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. I really need to do well on this. Would you be willing to at least try? He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't expected. Not apathy, but fear. I'm not smart like you, Harper. I'll just drag you down. You don't know that. And I don't know that I'm smart. I just work hard. That's the same thing, isn't it? No, it really isn't. We agreed to meet at the library after school to brainstorm ideas. I arrived to find Marcus already there, which surprised me. He had a notebook out and had been making notes. I looked up past winning projects, he said, pushing the notebook toward me. They're all really complicated, like PhD level stuff. How are we supposed to compete with that? I scanned his notes. He was right. The previous winners had tackled complex topics with sophisticated methodologies. But as I read, something occurred to me. They're all really complicated, I said slowly. But are they practical? Look at this one. Carbon nanotube applications in water filtration. Brilliant, but how many high school students have access to carbon nanotubes? So, what are you thinking? I'm thinking we do something simple, something anyone could do, something that actually helps people instead of just sounding impressive. His eyes lit up. Like what? Like, I thought about my neighborhood, about the community center where I volunteered. Like testing and comparing different low-cost water filtration methods for communities without access to clean water. We could use materials anyone could find, sand, gravel, charcoal. We could test their effectiveness and create a guide for building them. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, really smiled, for the first time since I'd met him. That's actually brilliant. It's science, but it's also service. It's practical. You think it could work? I think it's better than anything I would have come up with. We spent the next 3 hours planning. Marcus, it turned out, wasn't stupid or lazy. He just learned differently than I did. Once we started talking through the project in concrete terms, he contributed ideas I never would have thought of. He suggested we create video documentation to make the results accessible to people with different literacy levels. He thought of variables I'd missed. By the time the library closed, we had a solid plan. And I had a partner, a real one. The next Sunday dinner was particularly brutal. Sophia arrived with news that she'd been selected as one of 10 finalists for the State Science Symposium. Her project involved neural network applications in predicting climate patterns. It sounded impressive, and Aunt Natalie made sure everyone knew it. The judges said Sophia's work was graduate level, she announced, her voice ringing through our dining room. Graduate level. Can you imagine? Most adults couldn't do what she's doing. That's wonderful, Sophia, Mom said, passing the potatoes. Are you competing against many other students? Oh, hundreds entered, but only 10 were selected as finalists. The competition is this weekend. Sophia's eyes found mine across the table. Are you entering anything, Harper? Yes, actually. Marcus Webb and I are working on a water filtration project. Water filtration? Aunt Natalie's tone suggested I'd just announced plans to study mud. How quaint. Is that really advanced enough for the symposium? We're testing practical, low-cost methods for communities without access to clean water, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. The focus is on accessibility and real-world application. Sophia laughed, a light tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. So, it's more of a charity project than actual science? It's both, Dad interjected, his voice quiet but firm. Science in service of humanity. Seems pretty important to me. Of course, Robert, of course. Aunt Natalie smiled patronizingly. It's sweet that Harper is so civic-minded. Although, between you and me, she leaned in conspiratorially, though her voice remained loud enough for everyone to hear. The symposium judges are looking for innovation, breakthrough thinking, not high school students playing around with sand and water. Mom's fork clinked against her plate. Natalie, that's enough. What? I'm just being realistic, Lila. You're not doing Harper any favors by letting her believe. I said that's enough. Mom's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Harper is brilliant and hardworking, and her project is valuable. If you can't be supportive, then perhaps we should end dinner early. The table fell silent. I stared at my mother. This woman who always tried to keep the peace, who never made waves. She met my eyes and smiled, a warrior's smile. Aunt Natalie recovered first, laughing uncomfortably. Well, I didn't mean to offend. I'm sure Harper will do adequately. It's just that Sophia has such high standards. It's hard for her to relate to simpler approaches. Simplicity takes sophistication, Dad said. Something I think Sophia might learn someday. The rest of dinner passed in strained politeness. When Sophia and I were clearing the table, she leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper. You're going to embarrass yourself this weekend, you know? My mother's right. Your little project is nothing compared to what I'm doing. Nothing? I set down the plates I was carrying and turned to face her fully. Why do you hate me so much, Sophia? What did I ever do to you? She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. I don't hate you. Yes, you do. You and your mother. You've spent years making me feel small and worthless. Why? For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Something that looked almost like regret, or maybe shame. But then her expression hardened again. Because you're in my way, she said simply. Because every time we come here, I have to watch your mother look at you like you hung the moon, and your father praise you for trying. Meanwhile, my mother only cares when I win, when I'm the best. Do you know what it's like to never be enough, no matter what you achieve? I stared at her, genuinely shocked. Sophia, forget it. She picked up the plates and walked away, leaving me standing in the dining room, my mind reeling. Was this really about me? Or was it about her, about the pressure she lived under, about a mother who valued achievement over everything else? The symposium was held at the State University on a cold Saturday in late November. Marcus and I arrived early, our display boards and materials carefully packed. As we set up in the exhibition hall, I watched other students preparing their presentations. They all looked so confident, so polished. We've got this, Marcus said, sensing my nervousness. Our presentation is solid. He was right. We'd spent weeks refining everything. Our display included test results from 5 different filtration methods, clear documentation of our methodology, and a step-by-step guide for building each filter. We'd even created QR codes linking to video tutorials. 3 booths down, I spotted Sophia. Her display was impressive, filled with graphs and equations and technical terminology. She saw me looking and smiled that cold smile. The judges began making their rounds. They were professors from the university, intimidating in their knowledge and authority. When they reached our booth, I took a deep breath. "Tell us about your project," the lead judge, Dr. Martinez, said. I launched into our presentation, explaining the problem, our methodology, our results. Marcus jumped in when I paused, adding details about the accessibility features we'd built in. We worked together seamlessly, finishing each other's thoughts, answering questions with confidence. When we finished, Dr. Martinez studied our display thoughtfully. "This is practical work, very practical, but is it innovative?" My heart sank. This was exactly what Aunt Natalie had said. But then Dr. Martinez smiled. "I ask that because innovation isn't always about complexity. Sometimes it's about seeing a simple solution to a complicated problem. Sometimes it's about making knowledge accessible instead of exclusive. You two have done something important here. You've created science in service of humanity. That matters." After the judges moved on, Marcus grabbed my arm, his eyes wide. "Did that just happen? Did she basically say we nailed it?" "I think so, but there are still 9 other finalists." When the judges reached Sophia's booth, I couldn't help but watch. She was poised and articulate, explaining her neural network model with the ease of someone who'd practiced 1,000 times. The judges nodded, asked questions, took notes, but then something shifted. One of the judges, Dr. Patel, leaned closer to Sophia's display, examining something. He asked a question I couldn't hear. Sophia's response was confident, but Dr. Patel frowned. He asked another question. This time, Sophia hesitated. The exchange went on for several minutes, becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, the judges moved on, but their expressions were troubled. During the break, I saw Sophia in the bathroom, standing at the sink, staring at her reflection. Her perfect composure had cracked. When she saw me in the mirror, she turned. "Go ahead," she said bitterly. "Say it." "Say what?" "That I'm a fraud, that my mother pushed me into this, that I don't actually understand half of what I presented." I walked to the sink beside her, washing my hands slowly. "Is that true? Does it matter? I'm going to fail anyway." Dr. Patel figured out that I didn't actually write all the code myself. I had help, a lot of help, and I can't answer his questions because I don't actually understand how it works. She laughed, but it sounded like crying. "My mother is going to kill me. She's been telling everyone I'm a genius, that I'm going to Stanford, that I'm the best. And I'm not. I'm just someone trying not to drown." For years, I'd imagined this moment. Sophia's perfect facade cracking, her admitting she wasn't actually superior to me. I'd imagined feeling triumphant, vindicated. But standing there in that bathroom, watching this girl who tormented me fall apart, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad. Sad for both of us, for all the time we'd wasted competing instead of supporting each other. "Sophia," I said quietly, "you're not drowning. You're just caught in the current your mother created. And yeah, you messed up. You tried to take a shortcut and it backfired. But that doesn't make you worthless. It makes you human." She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time ever. "Why are you being nice to me? I've been horrible to you." Because being horrible back doesn't make anything better, and because I think I finally understand something. This isn't about you and me. This is about your mother's need to have a perfect daughter and your need to meet impossible standards. I don't have to play that game anymore. "Your mother is lucky," Sophia said softly. "She loves you just for being you." "Yeah, she does, and I'm sorry your mother doesn't give you that." We stood there for a moment in silence. Then Sophia straightened up, wiping her eyes. "I should go face the music. Good luck, Harper. I mean it. I hope you win." The awards ceremony was held that evening. Marcus and I sat with our families. His parents had driven up for the event, and my parents sat on either side of me, solid and supportive. Aunt Natalie and Sophia sat several rows behind us. I didn't turn around to look at them. The judges announced the winners in reverse order. Third place went to a project on antibiotic resistance in bacteria. Second place went to a renewable energy project. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. And first place, Dr. Martinez announced, goes to Harper Carter and Marcus Webb for their project on accessible water filtration methods. Their work exemplifies what science should be: rigorous, practical, and focused on improving lives. Congratulations! The applause was deafening. Marcus grabbed my hand, squeezing tight. Mom was crying. Dad's arm was around my shoulders. We walked to the stage in a daze, accepted our trophy and scholarship certificates, shook hands with the judges. From the stage, I could see the whole auditorium. I saw Marcus's parents beaming with pride. I saw my parents, their faces glowing, and I saw Sophia and Aunt Natalie. Sophia was clapping, a genuine smile on her face. Aunt Natalie sat frozen, her expression unreadable. The next Sunday, Aunt Natalie didn't come to dinner. Mom called her, but she made an excuse. Sophia came, though, driving herself in her mother's car. "Mom's not feeling well," she said, which we all knew was code for "too embarrassed to face you." We had a quiet dinner, just the four of us and Sophia. It was the most pleasant meal we'd had in years. Sophia asked questions about our project, genuinely curious. She talked about her plans to take some time off before college, to figure out what she actually wanted instead of what her mother wanted for her. As we were clearing the table, she pulled me aside. "Harper, I need to say something. I'm sorry for everything. For years of being cruel and dismissive and making you feel small. You deserved better, and I'm sorry I didn't give you that." "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot. And congratulations, really. Your project was brilliant. It actually mattered, you know? Mine was just impressive sounding, but yours will actually help people. You could do that too, you know? Help people. You're smart, Sophia. Really smart. Once you stop trying to prove it to everyone and just be it." She nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'd like to try." That night, lying in bed with my scholarship certificate propped on my desk, I thought about everything that had happened, about comparison and competition, about worth and validation, about the weight we carry when we let other people define our value. I thought about Dad's words: real confidence doesn't need an audience. Success isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being the best version of yourself. I'd spent so long trying to prove I was as good as Sophia, trying to measure up to Aunt Natalie's impossible standards. But the truth was, I'd always been enough. The scholarship was wonderful, the recognition was gratifying, but they weren't what made me valuable. What made me valuable was the work itself. The hours Marcus and I had spent testing and retesting our methods. The videos we'd created to make the information accessible. The knowledge that somewhere, someone might use what we'd learned to create clean water for their community. That was worth more than any trophy, more than any scholarship, more than any comparison or competition could ever measure. I picked up my phone and texted Sophia. "Thank you for today and for being honest." Her response came a few minutes later. "Thank you for being kind when I didn't deserve it. That's real strength." I smiled and set my phone down. Outside my window, the night was dark but full of stars, each one burning bright, not in competition with the others, but simply existing in its own light. That's what I wanted to be, not better than Sophia or anyone else. Just fully, authentically myself, burning bright in my own way, on my own terms, for my own reasons. And that, I realized, was the only success that really mattered.